Hey gang, welcome to this week's local SEO and digital marketing Q&A session with me and my two good friends, Jason Brown and Ben Fisher. How you doing, guys?
Hey, happy Friday, everybody.
Good to see you. Good session today. You got the three of us. We're going to be answering a lot of questions you guys have submitted already. And plus, we're open to any questions you guys have. If you're watching us on Zoom, just pop them into the Q&A section down there on your Zoom toolbar. If you're watching us live on Facebook, pop it down there in the comments, and we will be monitoring both of those. As usual, a little bit of housekeeping. If you want to get a hold of Ben or Jason, highly recommend you do. Great guys. You can reach Ben at steadydemand.com or at The Social Dude on Twitter. And Jason, you can reach him at reviewfraud.org or at Kaiser Holiday. Of course, I'm the founder of Local Marketing Institute. My name is Eric Schoenfeld. And if you're not yet on our email newsletter, highly recommend you do it. We don't send out very often, a couple times a week, but pop on there, get invitations to these sessions and more. Just go to localmarketinginstitute.com. Sign up for our podcast on any platform you want out there or on Alexa. All these sessions are recorded. They're released on our website the following Tuesday, and they're also available on our podcast. And then finally, join our Facebook group, Local Marketing Institute Connect. There have been some great discussions and good questions out there this week. And one of the things I really appreciated is, Jason, Ben, and I, we're selective on who comes in here. We want legitimate businesses, legitimate marketers. We try to keep out the spammers on here. And it's just some good, positive conversations. So come on out there. Feel free to ask any specific questions that you may have if we don't get to them during this session. So I think we're getting ready to jump in here to some of the questions that we have. I'm going to just rearrange a couple little things here, and let's dive on in. Ben, you said you had something about Google Posts and the API. Some new news for us here.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you all remember, basically when it came to posts and anybody who has a franchise or a chain, they were not able to use basically GMB Posts at all. And as soon as the pandemic hit, they opened up posts for chains and they said it was going to be a temporary type of situation. This has now actually been decided that here you go. Posts for chains are now here to stay. Interesting reason is why. So one of the things that I thought it was is that it was because of the fact that chains might do a bunch of content which is the same. And that was why they were holding off. And that was actually what it ended up being. And what they saw is that once they opened up posts for chains, is that chains were actually uploading good and unique content that was locally relevant. So therefore, that played it big time into the decision to keep it. So yes. And we also found out one interesting other little thing, and that is for hotels and posts. And with hotels and posts, what that was is that basically the option was given to hotels.
No.
What do you want to say?
NDA.
Oh yeah, that's true. Never mind. Yeah, God, always fun to.
We got to be a little bit careful on the session here because Jason and Ben have some inside information here that they get access to a little bit before the rest of us. So we just be a little careful. So appreciate the heads up on that. Hey,
I alluded to hotel posts last week, and that's the only thing we can say. But Ben, what is the one API feature that chains were not allowed to do and use?
One feature that they're not allowed to do?
Oh, way to quiz them right on the show.
Right.
I have no idea what you're talking about now, JB.
Okay, you are a Google My Business.
Yeah, product diaper. What's your point?
Yeah, you cannot do products with the API.
Oh yeah, duh, that's right.
Oh, cool.
So many freaking things to keep track of.
Well, that's great news, though. It means
correct.
there are going to be a lot more tools available now to chains and franchises to be able to do posting in general places. And it seems like the concern previously to this was that chains wouldn't be doing localized content. They'd just be sending out
blasting
more brand messages.
Yeah. And it's a good point, though. I mean, what JV is bringing up here, and the fact that that chains can't use product posts, because if anything, they're the ones who actually should be using product posts.
Things will adapt over. But
Yeah.
it seems like Google's making some more moves into the whole post space because Jason, you want to talk about the red dots highlighting recent posts coming on?
Yep. So Joy Hawkins just did a write-up on Local U about when you are looking at a business listing, you will see a red dot when there is a brand new update. And the easiest way to get that update is to have a current post within the past 2 weeks. So needless to say, if you were to go and hurry up and do some Google posts, you could turn on that red light tonight.
So does this appear only on the listing itself as that we've seen so far? Or does this appear are they actually highlighting businesses in like group results on the maps or things like that?
I don't know. I'm gonna have to look into this one, but this is obviously looking at somebody's knowledge panel on mobile. So, so it's definitely going to be triggered when you're looking at that listing. So, I'm not a big fan of Google Posts. So let's see if this actually starts triggering, more legitimate views and a better CTR. Cause, so far I'm just kind of not sold on it. So, but yeah, if Google can actually do something and turn it on that red light, will draw more attention to your listing. So we'll see.
Starting to give more attention to posts.
The one thing I will also say about this red dot too is it's kind of interesting, right? If you look at their overall design, the changes that they've been making over the past 6 months, we've got the new dashboard that came out, right? And now next to the edit icon is going to be a red dot. And that's if there are edits which are pending. So it's obviously meant to bring your attention to it. And it obviously works, right? Because they wouldn't be implementing it on GMB Web if it didn't actually work. So I think this is a fantastic update for mobile. I don't see how it could work on desktop though.
Trisha also mentioned that she's seen where users can actually add an update to posts. So it's interesting. We'll have to look into that.
Update to a post. Trisha, do you have a link?
Yeah, we'll take a look at that.
Yeah, that was the tweet we looked at earlier that we're going to dive into next week.
Okay. Steve did ask a good question, though, getting back to the API for chains with posts. He said, do you know if chains or multi-location GMBs can post the same post to all locations at once, or does it have to be specific? Or
So the answer to that is kind of goes back to what we were talking about, right? And as to why. The answer, black and white answer is yes, you can do that. Should you do that? The answer is probably going to be no.
That'll probably be situation specific, but the API doesn't restrict it.
API doesn't care one way or the other.
Well, it could if if every location is running the same offer, so you're an eyelash chain and you're doing a buy one get 1 month free or something like that, then yes, it would make sense to do the same post. But if you're just going to keep sharing the same posts over and over again on all the listings, it may not have that effect. But it's going to vary from brand to brand and market to market.
Yeah,
but with some of the Freddy's restaurants.
The API is not going to discriminate, I guess is my point there.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, let's move on here. We had an interesting question in our forum, in the Local Marketing Institute Connect forum this week. Someone was asking about open graph settings and how they could modify it for their site, so that when their site was shared, what it would look. So I thought we touched on this a little bit last week. I thought we maybe dive a little bit into that more this week. So if you're not familiar with the whole open graph thing, I'm going to go out to Facebook here for a second. I'll just use Facebook as an example. And I'm going to post a link. I'll use my favorite little poster child here. I'm going to put in a link here to my favorite. Well, that's because if I spell the domain right, I don't like this domain, but that's okay. All right, so this is a Plumber site. Let's see if it pulls up. There we go. This is open graph data. Basically, it's being pulled into Facebook. Twitter has something similar. LinkedIn has something similar. So when you put in a URL, whatever page it is, whether it's the home page or the other page, it'll pull up an image associated with that page. It'll pull up a title about that page, and it'll pull up basically a description about that page into the sharing. And so the question was, hey, how do I go about setting these? I don't think I've actually set them. So there was two things that I wanted to deal with. Tim Capper was helping me on this thread, which I really appreciate Tim's help on this. We took their site and a couple things that you can do. So there's some tools out there. One is the Facebook sharing debugger. I'll put that into the chat, and we will also put this archived with the post. This is a site you can use to see basically how your particular site or page will look like when it's shared to social. I highly recommend that local businesses do this. Check this out, especially for your home page, but you really should check it for every page. So if we do, again, we just do it here, put the same site in, and we click debug, there we go. Now, this person was concerned that, hey, there were some missing properties. There were 3 missing properties that this person had on here. I wanted to point out that if you needed to, first of all, Facebook doesn't need those. While it recommends these properties here, they're warnings, not errors. So if you don't actually define the open graph image and the open graph title and the open graph description, if you don't actually define those per se, most social properties, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook amongst them, will actually default to the primary image or featured image that it can find on the page. It will default to the page title. That's this little thing up here at the top that you see on any tab that you open, and will default to if there's no descriptive to the meta description tag on the page, the SEO meta description tag. And if you don't have one of those, it'll just pull the first text it can find. So it will automatically do it. So you don't necessarily have to worry about it, but go out, check your site. If we need to, Twitter has one too. It's called the Twitter card validator. I'll put that out there. And the LinkedIn post inspector, I'll put that out in the tweet as well. So you can use any one of these 3 tools, and then you can check out and see what your site looks like when it's shared to social. So we had an interesting discussion, Jason and I, before the show here today on, well, what's the best way to add schema data to your site? Because that was another question that had come up in the threads from last week. So I'm still a fan of Yoast. I know that Yoast sometimes gets a bad rap. Jason's shaking his head no. I do like Yoast SEO Local. It can be overkill. It can be overkill for some things, but this is one option. This works for WordPress only. I think they have a Drupal one too. I'm not sure if they have the local, but this is one option here. It's basically $70 a year for the site. Jason, you like rank math though. You want to talk a little bit about rank math, and this is again for WordPress sites, right?
Correct. Yeah. So rank math is not, is a lot cleaner. So when you use Yoast or however you want to pronounce it, it bogs down the speed on your website, and because it's got so many applications that are running in the background, so it can really drastically, hurt your site performance and speed. Plus, a lot of the features that you really truly need are getting pushed farther and farther behind a paywall. Now, the team at Rank Math have actually been listening to developers and SEOs, and so they're constantly, getting our feedback on what we want and how we can improve their tool. And they just released a new update this week. But they'll email you when new and exciting stuff's coming out. So it's a lot better. I really like it. There's a lot that you can get on their free plan that you don't have to worry about. But yeah, if you want to upgrade for other stuff, which I don't, because I have other tools that I get to use. It's pretty handy and nifty, and I like it.
Do you use the free version?
Free version, yeah.
Okay. So good. So this is a great one to take a look at. Rank Math. After our discussion, I'm going to check into this a little bit more. Another good one out there. If you need to, though, there are other options. So a lot of times, what am I trying to say here? The CMS systems are getting better about being able to add schema markup to a site. So check with your specific provider. In addition to that, there's some schema markup generators out there that you can find that you can do and you can create for free. I don't want to get too deep into this because this gets really technical. But bottom line, you can add this to any site. See if your CMS supports it. If you're using WordPress, there is Yoast, there is Rank Math. If you're using something else, they may have it built into it, or you can make third-party HTML or JSON code and stick it on the site and add schema data to the site. So that was the other question that we wanted to get to here with the Open Graph settings. And I think I actually jumped ahead, didn't I, about the schema data? I did.
Oops.
Sorry, guys. I am actually working on about 3 hours of sleep over the last 3 days, so I'm not fully with it right now.
It's all good, buddy.
Yeah. Hey, good question came in. Ben,
Yes.
how does Google decide which pins to show when looking at Google Maps? I think we can use this as an example.
Yeah. The short answer is this, is that you'll notice that there are 2 green pins, and then you're going to notice that there's 20 red pins. Why? Because we have 2 ads and we have 20 results. So basically it's what is showing. What's the first 20 results? That's how you get your pin, is you get up in the 20. And that's, of course, proximity, relevance, and prominence, right? So if you work on your prominence and relevance, you're going to rank better. And then you're going to have your pin show up. There are also branded pins, and there's some other things, but I'm going to turn it over to JB. JB, you want to go ahead and talk about the rest?
Yeah, so this is if you're specifically looking for Attorneys Manhattan. Now, if you were to look up a local business in your area and it was a shopping center, as you start zooming in and out, you're going to definitely notice that you're going to see some map pins disappear and others are going to start appearing. And that's just because Google really, truly cannot have all of maps just filled with all of these, all of these different businesses. So you'll notice, as Eric is playing around, King Scooper shows up. As soon as you zoom out, it's gonna probably disappear. And as you drill down more, drill in more, go zoom in. So as you start zooming in, now you see Little Caesars. Now you're seeing a Quiznos. Now you're seeing other businesses that are going to come and show up. And you're
starting to see some attributes too.
Yeah, you'll see attributes. But yeah, that's just because Google really, truly cannot clutter the entire map with just a bunch of place labels. And so it's going to be dependent on sometimes the search query or the how relevant that business is to that other one. And because we get asked that all the time. It's like, well, how come, this other guy shows up and I don't? And it's like, well, this is Google's, algorithms. We try and do the best we can to work with algorithms, but we can't always, get what we want all the time. This isn't Burger King.
Makes sense. So I think kind of diving a little bit more on that here, there's a lot of businesses who want to know, hey, I'm on Google Maps, but why is my pin not showing up? And Ben, I think to your point, it's the whole EAT concept, right? So that's the prominence, the relevance, or whatever. What's the acronym?
Proximity. Well, you're talking about EAT, but
not EAT. Never mind.
It's the 3 pillars on which Google actually
right.
stands.
But as we're diving in here, these are the 20 companies that will rank the best for this particular search from this particular location with this geographic region.
Right.
And then obviously as I zoom in, the results change. As I zoom in more, the results change. And now some of the ones that weren't showing up are starting to show up because they're now fitting on the map and they're matching the best geographic relevance, the best prominence.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And the best authority for those. So that's why things do not show up. I think the other factor that's part of this is the saturation, right? So it's not just a geographical area. It has to do with how many businesses also match that particular query within that geographic area. That's why I chose Manhattan for this example.
Sure.
Because there'd be a ton of attorneys here, and Google can't show all 50,000 attorneys in Manhattan.
And if you go to a smaller demographic, actually, if you zoom in far enough, you'll get 0 results.
Right. Exactly. I did think that was really interesting to point out here, the green pins. Mm-hmm. And if you see the green pins, those are ads on there. And then those are location extension ads, right?
Yep.
And then the other one I wanted to show out here was, we had a question actually just come in. What's this one here? What's this particular pin here?
Oh, that's a branded ad. Basically, I don't know what the technical name for it is. Branded, I think it's branded pin. And it's available to chains, but it's also available to you if you spend $1,000 a day in AdWords.
There you go.
Or more.
So in other words, pretty hefty price point to get in where you get the point of the branded pins.
Yeah, but I mean, as you can see, it's probably very, very worth it for Safeway, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. So that answers, Gavin, hopefully that answers your question there as to the branded pins and will Google make it easier for SMBs to do it? I have no idea. Right now, they're kind of an exclusive kind of thing for some high spenders.
Yeah, and just so people know, it's not $1,000 per day per location. It's just spending $1,000. So if you have 500 locations, you can easily hit that.
Yep.
Right. There are also specialized pins for certain things. Like you can see, hey, this is a type of business, right? For the different types of businesses. And then that's also
that's based on primary category.
Right, that's category, and also things like this, which are for like national parks or specific landmarks, are also out there. So those are different kinds of pins.
Yeah, they've got it for the Empire State Building and Disneyland and all sorts of cool fun things.
Yep.
Pintopia. All right, we'll go.
Stick a pin in it. Stick a pin in it.
Stick a pin in it. Exactly. We'll go off the pins here. Jason, here's a great question for you. Mm-hmm. Does SEO suffer without an address? So here's, I think, the gist. Do you have to have an address in your GMB account to help your SEO if your business is a service provider, not a storefront? Does SEO suffer without an address? I think this comes back to the whole question of, do storefront businesses have a local search advantage over service area businesses?
Well, no, I don't see that being truly the case. So your listing is going to rank based off of where you verify your listing. So whether you're showing your address or hiding your address, your rankings are based off of that exact point. I think the problem that people get into when they're doing SABs is they don't think about other additional citations, right? So they sit there and say, well, I'm a service area business, so I don't need to do Yelp. I don't need to do Apple Maps. I don't need to do, X, Y, Z. There is a value to getting those citations, showing. And so I think people put themselves at a disadvantage when they're like, well, I'm not showing my address, so I'm not going to do all of the best practices that I would do if I were showing my address. So I think that's the biggest thing. But I mean, I was working with, and I use this all the time, I was working with an SAB, company, and they were, in South Chicago, but for some reason they were able to actually rank at the airport. So, which I thought was quite interesting. So there are ways that it can work. And so, yes, if you were to go from showing your address and hiding your address, you will see a decrease in rankings. But there are ways that you can optimize your website and your listings and your citations to counterbalance that. And plus, links really help.
Yeah, Michael had a great point here. I'm sorry, Ben, did I interrupt you?
No, I was just going to add on to that is that there is also a little bit of it depends kind of scenario that goes on here too, right? So if you have a lot of competition and you're in a highly dense place, with a large population, yes, having an SAB is probably going to be a little bit worse off for you. However, there's a lot that has to come in that deals with intent. Right. So if there's an intent to find a service area based business, you're probably actually going to rank better than somebody who does have a PIN.
Very good point. Very good point. I wanted to point out, Michael had a very good comment here. So I thought Apple Maps wasn't available unless you actually showed your address or had a location. And I think I'd like to just tackle that real quick. I think if I may interpret, Jason, what you were saying here. Jason wasn't saying that that on Google, you can choose to hide or show your address. But what Jason was saying is when you're also taking into account these other citations, Apple Maps, Yelp, whatever else you may have out there, that can actually help establish your authority for your Google listing even more. And you're correct. On Apple Maps, they don't have the concept of a service area business there. You have to have an address out there. By the way, Apple Maps also doesn't care if you use a post office box. but you have to have an address out there. So Michael, you would still have your Apple Maps listing, but having the Apple Maps listing can actually help impact your GMB listing to a slight degree. May I interpret that right, Jason?
Yeah. So Google's the only one where they really truly want you to hide your address, but all the other ones you can create those listings with your address. And so when I set up SABs, I go through Yext and I check that radio box that says, don't show my address. But they still send my data out there, and if a citation won't hide the address, then they'll just publish that address. But as long as it's in compliance with whatever the platform's terms of service is, then you're fine. Unless you're like one of those situations where you don't want your address showing up online, then come up with other ways to do it. But like Eric said, you can use PO boxes for these other platforms. However you register your business, you just can't use a PO box for GMB.
So, I mean, one of the key things I want to bring out to Kate's question that she asked here, do you have to have an address in your GMB account to help your SEO of your business as a service provider? So bottom line, you do have an address. That's the address where you're verifying from, but you don't have to show that address. And actually, if you are just a service area business, you shouldn't be showing your address. Correct, guys?
Yep.
Correct. And that's where you want to go into the info tab, add the cities that you serve, make sure it's not more than a 2-hour radius away from where you're located. And then you go to that address field and you scroll down and you just click clear address. And now you've gone from showing your address to hiding your address. And now you're in compliance.
So yeah, I was going to say, Heather just had that actual question. She's been unable to change a plumber from a PIN address to a service area. And so your recommendation to change it again, Jason, is
add the cities that you service, that as long as it's not, more than 2 hours away, so don't try to do like the whole state or the whole city if it's like Houston, because there's different parts, but you can add those zip codes or those cities that you want to target. And then you go into that info tab, scroll down to the bottom and click clear address. And I did this specifically because I saw Heather's question. So it's like it tied in perfectly.
Great. So let's stick on the topic of service areas here for just a second, because Stephen just wrote in a good question. But what if I service the entire country? And I think we've talked about this before on here about what the purpose of a Google My Business listing is. So you guys want to tackle that one?
Yeah.
Sure, I love this one.
So, I mean, basically, number one, don't set your service area as the entire country. Sounds like by the way, you're an online business, which also means that you probably wouldn't qualify for a GMB. That is an assumption. However, the guidelines state that a service area should be extend no longer than 2 hours normal driving distance from your point of verification. So if you want to stay within the guidelines, you'll set it for 2 hours. You won't set it for the entire nation. And unless you wouldn't. That's all there is to it.
You wouldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, so let's be blunt about this. So Stephen, Google My Business, it really is for a local business that serves local clientele, right? And now there are businesses out there that serve a local business, serve a local clientele, but also do something via e-commerce or other things like that nationally. You can qualify for a Google My Business listing, but you got to think your Google My Business listing, it's about for your local clientele. So set your service area appropriately. And very interestingly, we had a really great discussion with, I'm drawing a blank here today, but a gentleman who's really smart in the HVAC space, heating, ventilation, air conditioning space. And he said that if you actually look at the sales receipts of 90%, 95% of the HVAC companies out there, the vast majority of their businesses, vast majority of the actual business, something like 95% of their business comes within a 15-mile radius of the actual business. So he's like, stop wasting your time trying to extend your business over a huge geographic area when the bulk of your business comes in that radius. Now, obviously that varies industry to industry. But Google My Business, and we've all seen these diagram maps that we've seen off of things like DBA platform and things like this, where they show, hey, where you're going to rank the highest is the closest to your proximity to your business. And then as you get further and further away geographically, you're going to rank lower. That's just the way it is. So anyway, I think I'll throw that out there. If you do service the entire country on top of your GMB listing, that's fine, but you cannot do a global GMB listing. I'm glad you recognize that. That's awesome. I think that's the best response I've seen.
I would love to see some. I've seen these actually before, but it's so funny. I've seen somebody who did have a global GMB service area.
Yeah, I was dealing with somebody, in just the last few weeks where it was that exact same thing. They were, selling discounted stamps and shipping services, and they created a GMB listing. It was at a co-working space. It was also sharing the same address as their other business. And I said, look, if you want to be a national business, don't focus on GMB, focus on ads, because you're going to be able to get a lot more bang for your buck. The other option is to do it. You set your category as corporate, but you're not going to get those types of local results because a lot of your GMB rankings is going to be dependent on your category. And so when people are trying to find you and all they get is that corporate listing, you're going to be missing out on a lot of traction in traffic. So I say just don't do it. Do ads.
Good stuff. Let's stick on this vein for a little bit. Paul had an interesting question. He's like, so would you mix addresses? Like, hide your listing on your GMB with where you're actually located, use a PO box on some listings where, so basically, use your actual address on GMB and others where you can hide the address, and use a PO box on other listings where you cannot hide your address.
I mean, you could. It might cause some confusion. I've seen, especially when people are doing spam fighting, they'll look and they'll see if like a website says it's a PO box, they'll automatically think that SAB is a PO box as well. I mean, you won't get suspended because you'll be in compliance, but I mean, I don't know.
I would watch out because Google could end up creating listings. That happens. There's also something like what's called an integrity check and also data confusion, right? So Google will sometimes look at what they consider to be authoritative third-party sources to corroborate data. Mm-hmm. And if the data is incorrect, it's going to go with what it thinks is the best.
And actually, other services are trying to do that as well. For instance, I got a notification for a business that I help with from Bing, where Bing is saying, hey, we noticed that your address here in Bing doesn't match your address on Google. Which address is correct?
Yeah.
So they're going to start to do it. So again, I still just come back down to, guys, just keep it simple. Put your address in the right location. Keep things consistent, and let's not worry about trying to nuance and game the system. We can spend a lot more time doing more productive things, would be my opinion. Okay. Let's go on to a couple other questions here. Here's an interesting one, guys, from Larry. And Larry, I'm glad we're getting to this. I know you posted this a couple of weeks ago, so my apologies. He says, well, I know it's against guidelines to not use your proper business name, for GMB. What options or recommendations are available for clients that change the name of their business after new ownership? I've seen some GMB listings that have a parentheses, formerly XYZ, after the normal business name. For example, East Coast Fire and Mold, previously Restoration King. What do you guys think about that?
Formerly is against the guidelines, I would say. It's adding a descriptor, basically, is what it comes down to. And by the way, one thing you'll notice, if you take out that formerly and you search for that brand name, you're probably going to come up with your listing. Google's kind of smart enough to know.
Yeah. Jason, any thoughts on that one?
No, exactly what Ben says. Yeah, whenever I come across those when I'm spam fighting, I just start removing those right away. But it is a great way that you can get yourself suspended. So if you have that in there and you're an SAB and you're not hiding your address, once you hit once there's 2 issues with your Google My Business listing, that's when the Google team will come in and suspend you.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the concept here. The concept is, okay, you've just acquired this business and it's now become a new name. Therefore, hey, you want people to know, hey, you're still the same business, it's just been acquired. So I kind of understand the desire to want to do a transition with the brand, but best advice I can say is just don't do that, because you do run the danger of having your listings suspended.
Yeah, but again, Google's going to already know. So it's, I mean, I get, like you said, I understand the motivation, right? The motivation is like, well, I should probably tell people. You don't need to. Google's already going to surface this information.
Yeah. I think it will do that. And you'd recommend changing the business name on an existing listing rather than rather than closing that and starting a new listing.
If the experience is the same, yes.
Okay, and I'll throw one more caveat. I think if the experience is the same, and if the online reputation of the previous business is good.
Yeah, there you go. That's true too. Yeah.
Right? Because if I just bought a business and their online reputation sucks, I'm shutting down that GMB and I'm starting a brand new one underneath my new business name.
Take a look at the question that just came up. It's a really good one.
The one from Heather?
Yeah.
Heather, are services generated from a standardized list, or does a bot check your website and produce ideas? I'm asking because all of a sudden a lot of new service ideas showed up on the account and I wonder where they came from.
Yeah, and the reason why I'm saying this, because this is actually pretty recent, like the last couple of weeks. Heather, just so you know, and everybody, is that these were actually generated by Google, and they stuffed whatever they thought was relevant into listings, so that way users would populate them more and get the full effect. Now, if you see a bunch of services that are not applicable to your clients, you can go ahead and delete them. They are from a canned list that Google has. So you can delete them and Google will not re-add those. Okay. So it's a one-time thing, just to kind of like a shot in the arm.
Got it.
But it has no...
Go ahead, Jason.
But just remember that those services have zero ranking benefit whatsoever.
The only thing that's good about those services is they might show up as what's called a justification, which is on a profile. It'll show up, underneath basically of everything. It'll have a little star. But Jason's absolutely correct. The services will not impact your ranking.
Makes sense. Jeffrey asked a really good question here, and I want to tackle this one because this is one of my personal pet peeves right now. Has anybody heard of the company Apple Maps registration or have any thoughts on it? So let me show you guys that site. Here it is. Hey Siri, directions, get listed, get started with the world's best virtual assistant, get on Siri.
So what are they reselling Yext?
Right? Oh, you know what? My Siri just came up on my phone. So pardon me. Bye, Siri. So I've seen this with Alexa. I've seen it with Siri. I've seen it with Apple. There are these companies out there that are trying to sell businesses. Hey, get listed on Alexa. Work with us. And they charge you something like God knows how many dollars a month to do it. Yeah. By the way, I think what they're actually doing is they're getting a Yext listing behind the scenes because Yext can directly post to Alexa.
Correct.
By the way, on Alexa, you don't need to. Alexa is taking from other major business listings like Yelp and others. All right. But this one here, don't do business with these guys. It's fraud. No, it's not say a fraud. They probably are doing it, but you don't need to do this. You don't need to do this. If you want to get listed on Apple Maps and you want to get also found in a Siri search, which searches Apple Maps, just go to Apple Maps Connect. Okay. Apple Maps Connect right here. You can sign in with an Apple ID or create one, and you can create and manage your own Apple Maps listing right there. And that also is what gets you listed in Siri. So these things drive me nuts because I see tons of businesses who are like, well, I want to be found on Apple Maps and I want to be found on Siri. These guys are going to take your money from you, and all they're going to do is turn around and do this. Don't do it. It's completely free. You guys can manage yourself. Or if you're using a management tool like a Yext or a Bright Local or even Whitespark can help you with this, they can help you with it too. So these things get my blood going on that one here. So thought I would address that one real quick. Okay. Here's an interesting one. Nate asks, Have you seen or experienced any success from the Google My Business marketing kit? Stickers, posters, et cetera, success or increase in brand awareness, search presence, et cetera. So I've got that up. Have you guys done anything with that much? I mean, it's kind of more of a nice little thing.
I did when it first came out because I was working with nationwide franchises, but I don't know, it was the same thing because Yelp had the exact same thing, right? Where you could get like branded Yelp items put inside your store, but every time I would go into a business and see it, it's like, oh, hey, yeah, look, they've got this Yelp thing, but it never really triggered or registered anything for me. So
yeah, this is one of those things that are created by Google specifically for the purpose of hitting the 90%. So the 90% of merchants who only have 1 to 2 business listings, they're a mom and pop shop. They're not going to hire a marketing company. It's the same target market, by the way, that creates business websites. Well, not spammers, but anybody else that doesn't want to create a website. So they use the GMB website, and that's who this is targeted at.
Makes sense. So I put the link to marketing kit here into the chat just in case people don't know about this, but let's use my favorite local brewery here, High Hops Brewery. And you can see up here, I also did it because I'm a manager on their account, but here's some stuff. Here's some free materials you can get. You can get some images, and you can customize these things with different posts, things like that on here. So there's all different kinds of shares on here. You can get a window sticker. You can put little cards on there, a review us on Google card. So there's some nice little things you can do. Yes, you can create a video on here.
The videos are cool.
The videos are actually pretty slick.
Yeah.
Here.
Go ahead and try and create one for High
Check
Hops,
it out. Man. There's some interesting little tools out here that might be helpful. Of course, they're gonna post making sure that your Google My Business listing is updated. But anyway, there you go. That's what Marketing Kit is. I mean, as far as it impacting customer engagement and customer awareness, I don't know that I've necessarily seen a lot of help. I mean, it could maybe generate a social media thing for you. I think that, if you are doing their ordering or booking, maybe this is a neat little card, this little review us on Google card. Hey, give it out to your customers. It's a neat little
interesting
card.
How they keep on mentioning the follow us on Google.
I'm telling you, I think, Ben, that they're going to keep pushing the posts even harder, and you're seeing it with the little red dots and now rolling out the chains. I know Jason doesn't like them, but I think they're going to try to push it harder.
Yeah, no, I agree. No, they're going to continue to push posts. That's a guarantee. They've been seen to be effective, so especially for conversions. But to answer a question, yes, all of this is free. And there's a little caveat to this. If you have a service area-based business, it is really hit and miss whether this will work.
Very true. This is definitely more designed for storefront type businesses.
It's because they use the Maps API. That's why.
Yep. Here's a great question from Brian. I'll let JB, why don't you tackle this one here at first. Is GMB data ever going to be included in Search Console?
No, I don't. No, and so you have to. So Google is completely siloed, so they don't work well with others. You take a big, giant, major corporation, big search giant like Google would tie everything in. So. They don't communicate with the other teams, and so the data that you're going to see in GMB, you're not going to get into Search Console. So you're not going to see those clicks and click for directions. So no, you won't see it, but at least you'll be able to get between the two platforms, you'll be able to get some good sense of what you're being found for. But, like Joy Hawkins, showed a couple of weeks ago, or has done studies on, when you're doing ranking reports and you're looking for your business with those keywords, you can actually see some of those keywords actually show up as in your insight data. So, take Google data with a grain of salt a lot of the time.
I think Nate brought up an interesting point. He said GMB data is kind of included in Search Console. If you use UTM tracking, you can see those specific pages.
Yeah.
So, and again, don't want to go too deep. I think we ought to tackle UTM tracking recommendations. We'll tackle that maybe next week. That'd be a good thing to get into.
Sure.
But what it is basically is there's little parameters you can put at the end of a URL. And so you can, like in your Google My Business listing or really in any listing, you can put the link to your website, add these specific parameters, and you can tell where it came from. And so you can actually see that, yes, in Google Search Console, but you can also see it in Google Analytics.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets really fun because now in Google Analytics, you can look at this stuff.
Yeah. Amy Toman actually has a really good guide that she put together. She's in the audience. Hi, Amy. But yeah, she has a really good guide that she put together. I believe it was Amy or Claire actually.
Claire.
Oh, it was Claire Carlisle. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
So Claire Carlisle put together this great guide on UTM tracking. So it's a really nice template.
We'll see if we can get that guide and put in there. But let's tackle some UTM stuff next week. I think it'd be kind of fun to do.
Easy.
Some recommendations on that. Okay, let's go over here. Good question from Steven. Have you guys seen any issues with using Hootsuite, Local Viking, or others to post to GMB? About a year ago, I used Hootsuite for GMB posting. About a month later, all my GMBs were suspended. I don't really know what caused it. I was able to get all of them restored.
Well, my general rule of thumb is watch out whatever you connect to your Google My Business. One of those pieces of software that you were talking about is highly used by spammers. And if you connected it to your GMB, you probably got caught in a good sweep. Okay. And that's all I can say about that. You can guess which one it is. But yeah, just in general, I say be careful with what you connect to GMB. You have no idea what that source is. You don't know what that source is doing. You don't know what's in the ecosystem. And, if Jason or I come after a bunch of listings and we cause a Google sweep, you might get caught up in that too.
Yep.
Yeah. And as last I heard, Local Viking lost their GMB API access, and I don't think they got it back. So I don't think that works. But it's hard to say if it was a third-party tool or if it was something that you were doing with your own listings, because we are seeing a lot more. We're seeing an uptick in the last couple of years where individual accounts may be doing stuff that are super shady. So, like last week, I dealt with 2 account level suspensions, and one guy actually got an email that said that Google was removing his entire Google account, and everything that he was associated with got suspended. So, if you're like me and you're doing spam fighting and you're, and you hit some of it's like playing Minesweeper. So if you know that Minesweeper game, Google doesn't tell you when you're getting close to a bomb, but if you hit a bomb, it's game over and your account's going to be suspended. And then any listing you're associated with will be suspended as well.
Yeah, there's one other caveat too I want to put out there, and that is you got to watch out for these scheduling tools, because what they'll do is some of them are set to, if a post gets rejected, post it again. And that is actually a really nasty loop. I had this one client that, talking about account level suspension, brick and mortar company that's been around for, north of 80 years plus, very well-known brand. However, they had social media. Their social media people were in charge of doing posts. It just so happened they were an adult company. And so they were putting up a lot of racy pictures, things like that.
Which are going to get suspended.
And so they just kept on posting and posting and posting. And after they would get rejected, and they got an account level suspension. All 30 of their locations went dark. So watch out for tools. That's all I got to say.
Yeah. And to jump on that point, Google does say that if you keep getting your posts rejected, that could lead to a suspension.
Yep.
Yeah. So a couple of quick things here. Trisha, thank you very much. Trisha posted a link in the chat to Claire Carlisle's complete guide to UTM tagging for GMB. That was awesome. By the way, it's interesting. Joy Hawkins and I have kind of gone back and forth about some nomenclature differences in the way we like to track GMB with UTMs. So that might be interesting to talk about next week. But I appreciate, Tricia, you putting that in there. Also, we had Heather asked if there's a good guide on Schema for local businesses. Martha Van Berkel, she is the queen of Schema out there. Love her to death. She's got a great guide that she just updated, I believe, about middle of last year. So about in May 2020. So it should be relatively up to date. I put that link out here as well. Martha might be fun to have on the show sometime, guys. She's also a really sharp person when it comes to schema markup out there. So that link is in there as well if anybody would like to do that. Okay, here's a great question from Jeffrey. Got time for probably a couple more questions, and we'll have to put the rest of them off till next week. Jeffrey says, what are your thoughts on people saying that having over a certain amount of Google reviews is useless?
I agree. I completely agree. For a ranking factor, Mike Blumenthal has done a study a couple years ago that after X amount of reviews, you lose that ranking factor. So you will definitely see situations and cases where a brand new listing with only a handful of reviews, if it's properly optimized, the title, has the keywords in it, it'll outrank a longevity listing with more reviews. The only reason why you would want to have a listing with more reviews is if you are in that map pack and you're only showing 30 and the two other people in the map pack are showing 170 or 205, well then from an aesthetic standpoint, those other listings will probably look, a little bit more enticing, but it's also going to come down to your overall rating as well. So if you've got 30 and you're a 4.9 and they've got, 497 and 4.1, well, then it won't matter for the review count. But I'm a definite big believer that I think we've oversold and over delivered on the importance of reviews, and we've completely missed the mark just by saying more is better.
However, ranking aside, 80% of people do look at reviews left in the last 2 weeks, along with responses. So from a conversion factor, continuing to have reviews is a very good idea.
100% agree, Ben. I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, Jason, to your point, let's talk about the number of reviews. The rule of thumb I think that we've talked about before is, hey, it's all in context. Look at your competitors in your market space, and are you, if your nearest competitor only has 43 reviews and you got 45, 48, 50, you're doing okay on that result from a number perspective. The ranking of the reviews also heavily matters. But then, Ben, to your point, this also goes back to the best review practice is it's better to have consistent reviews over time. So it's not about the number of reviews, it's about this consistent stream of reviews coming in on a regular basis. Because not just does Google look at that, but end customers. I think Bright Local did some great studies that said that customers completely discount any review that's older than 6 months old.
3 months, older than 3 months.
3 months, older than 3 months. Okay, I knew it was
but I mean, look, if you are a business and you are dealing with a handful of customers on a weekly basis, there's absolutely no way that you cannot generate one review a week. So you could easily get 52 reviews in a year. Or if you go for 2 reviews per week, you have 104 reviews. So I think a lot of people, are, hesitant about reviews, but I always say, if you don't ask, you're not going to get. And if you're just waiting for, for the reviews to just come naturally, organically without soliciting them, well, then your business isn't really going to do that well.
And Nate, I loved your comment. Yes, you are absolutely correct. Sarcasm understood. It will not benefit to buy hundreds of positive reviews from Fiverr. Don't do that. Just don't do that.
Well, you can actually, if you want a bunch of negative reviews, you could get them. You get engaged with one of those guys. I'm sure they'll give you some negative ones.
You can also
talk with them, guys. We thought don't ever even engage with anybody who offers to give you any kind of reviews, positive or buy negative reviews for a competitor. Because the minute you engage with them, you are now on the hook. And if you don't do business with them, boy, they're going to blackmail you.
And And also Google is getting to the point where they are starting to take away the ability to get reviews if you continue to get caught abusing the system, or it could also lead to an account level suspension. I'm waiting to see an account level suspension for abusing review policies, but I know it'll come.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
This is a horrible. I mean, forget the pieces over here. But I wanted to, if this was like, search impact, and this was number of reviews down here, Jason, I think this is kind of to your point. It's an S curve. In other words, at some point, the first one or two reviews doesn't have a ton of impact, but then as you begin to build more reviews, it has more impact. Once you reach a certain threshold, though, and it's different for every business in every market. Once you reach your competitors, once you reach that threshold, though, adding more reviews starts to have diminishing returns. I think that was your point earlier, though, Jason, right?
Right, exactly.
It's not a linear thing. I add 10 more reviews, I'm going to get 10% more benefit.
Right. You're getting, Mike and Gary just asked a question about it, but you do plateau, and it may be 5 reviews, it may be 10 reviews, it may be 20 reviews. Like, we don't know where that plateau is, but once you plateau, it's a few. You're not going to get any more ranking benefits from it whatsoever.
Yeah. So I did appreciate Gary's comment there that how Google handles reviews, no one knows the definitive answer, but Gary did say that he's found that they are a conversion factor, but not a ranking factor.
Right. Definitely. I agree. 100% agree, especially with review replies. If you come in, like we just had a case that came in on the forum and I tweeted it out, and it's not, not safe for work, but basically this business owner told somebody to go kill himself, Mother Flower, and it was Google translated it from Russian to English. But like, if you start coming in with like review responses like that, where you're telling people to go kill themselves or to go get bent, you will definitely see negative conversion factors on that.
Yeah, I would also say that just one little personal story about like what I did with Steady Demand. So there was this period of time where I wasn't doing anything with the listing except for getting reviews and doing posts, right? And no citations, nothing. My profile would not rank locally for those entire 3 years, even when I was getting tons of 5-star reviews, right? I think we got like 107 or something like that. It didn't impact the ranking. As a matter of fact, the only thing that impacted the ranking was when I got some local citations. So
interesting.
It's a case study of one, but we have a strong brand and reviews weren't doing it. So take that from that what you like.
So, okay. So I want to just make sure we clarify this.
Sure.
Because I'm getting a couple other comments here as well. And my thought went off, Jason, when I heard you as well. We're not saying that reviews do not impact your GMB ranking. We're saying that after a certain point, the impact diminishes. Is that correct?
Not that it diminishes, but that there's just no more. There's just no impact. So if you get 20 reviews, whatever ranking benefit you're going to get from those 20 reviews
is done.
Is done. So like you said, get 10 more reviews. I'm going to get 10% increased benefit. There's a certain ranking factor with X amount of reviews, and then it just stops. So if you were to go and get 1,000 reviews and they all had your services, your keywords, your geo modifiers in them, you're not going to continue to dominate your competition. That's where you're going to have to use other marketing factors to, like Ben said, to enhance your online profile.
Makes sense. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Jason, Ben, thank you guys as always. Appreciate it. We're out of time for the day. We will try to take any questions that were put in here and add them to the queue for next week. In the meantime, I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend, and we'll talk to you very soon. Bye-bye.
Everybody.
Thanks all. Have a great weekend.